Investors, Managing Editor of SC Magazine, and we're here today with Gabi Reish, Head of Product Management at Checkpoint. And we've been talking about the state of malware today and the fact that there are, with mobile, cloud, tablets, there are a bunch of new vectors of attack. So maybe we could pick up our conversation at that point. Gabi, what's going on now? Things have certainly changed with the consumerization of IT and people bringing their personal devices into the enterprise.
Yeah, hi Greg. So yeah, it's an interesting environment that we're in. If you look at the past 2-3 years, you know, we've been doing a lot more with IT today. You know, we've been using more and more different devices. We are providing our employees with, to some extent, a lot more freedom in using different devices. If it's tablets on one hand, if it's smartphones, organizations are embracing tablets as part of the way that people should communicate and operate in environments today, on one hand. Another environment that it's something that's happening is the cloud. And the cloud is something that IT organizations are more and more embracing, the different technology in the cloud, from infrastructure as a service to software as a service. The reason is to basically to control expenditures, to outsource a lot of the resources that they did in the past internally into the cloud itself is a very, very efficient way of basically of using IT in these worlds. And that's on one hand. But on the other hand, if you look at it, it actually brings with it a lot more threat vectors than in the past. Because if you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if you were an IT security person, you knew how to control your environment, you knew exactly what people would do, you know how they would do it, you actually provided very, very strong control of what machines they were using, what endpoints they were using, what software they were using inside the organization. In today's world, people are using many different types of devices. They're using many different devices in many different organizations. They're using it in the network, internet. They're using it from mobile devices. They're using it at home, in the office. They're roaming and moving from one device to the other. They're using the cloud. They're using cloud different services. They're using applications a lot more than they used in the past. For example, Dropbox and other types of data sharing applications that were not used in the past. And all these different elements, they are bringing a lot more vectors of threats or threat vectors inside organizations today. And the main aspect there is we as a security people, what's our role in this environment? Is our role environment to say no and to be restricted, to say, okay, no, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that, or are we supposed to, and what's supposed to be a source of enablement, a source of enabling the business to continue, and how should we enable the business to continue on one hand, but also provide very strong elements of security?
Absolutely. And you were mentioning to me before that the cloud, for instance, provides an opportunity for that kind of enablement. How's that?
So we were talking, and one of the key things today is that if you look at in multiple of the attacks, even if you look at the attacks that happened even in 2011, that's one of the things that interesting in attacks in 2011, and it's also starting in 2012. We see the same level of pattern, of the same patterns that are happening in 2012, is that many of them have a lot of common aspects together. So many organizations have been attacked, for example, with bots, and bots are attacks that are software agents that are embedded inside an infected machine inside an organization. And these bots are controlled by remote criminals through remote hideouts, used for sending spam outside from these infected machines, or for stealing data from inside the organizations, or for used for denial of service, coordinated denial or distributed denial of service attacks. And the thing is that many organizations that have been attacked, looking at research that's happened in 2011, 2012, there are a lot of commonalities between all the different attacks. That if there was some kind of level of collaboration between these different organizations, or there was kind of sharing of information between different organizations, then many of them could have been prevented or could have been blocked a lot faster, a lot quicker. And that the concept there is to provide some kind of a mechanism where I could collaborate not only to gain information, I could basically share information. Once I have knowledge of an attack, I can get this attack information, I can share it with the community, and then I can actually propagate this attack information to the rest of the community for them to actually take measures in as fast as possible.
Okay, you cited a figure that kind of astounded me. I missed it when I read the report from the Verizon data breach report, that 97% of attacks could have been prevented if simple measures had been implemented.
Yeah, that's you know, and unfortunately, it's something. It's one of these measures which is very consistent in Verizon's report. You know, from last year's also from report that about 96 or 97% of these data breaches that were analyzed by Verizon could have been prevented by very simple measures. And simple measures means that just by having some simple controls inside the organizations could have prevented them from happening. And just to give you one example, the Sony the data breaches that we saw in 2011 on Sony's PlayStation network and the subscribers that were attacked there, some of the researches that were done there showed that by simply having a firewall in place in front of that database, and simply by having the Apache web server updated with the latest patches, could have prevented this leakage from happening inside the networks. And you know, and the point is that in Verizon's data breach investigation report is that it's not about changing by 180 degrees your entire security portfolio, entire security policy, everything that you're doing. Sometimes by just taking some simple measures could actually prevent many of the attacks that are happening today.
And you were also talking about the need for collaboration, the way medical data, a new virus breaks out, that information is shared. How does that work in the security world so that people know in one part of the world to watch out for some bot attack or some IP address that should be on a blacklist?
So the concept here is that you know, I think that the medical environment is a very good example and very good analogy, because once there's kind of a breakout of a new strain of a flu or something like that, that immediately there's kind of a collaboration between all the medical institutes inside, globally all over the world in order to protect. So once there's a kind of a medical institute somewhere in the world that finds a new strain of a flu, as an example, immediately the rest of the world can actually take some measures to prevent that, because all this information is actually shared. And same thing should happen in the security environment. What we're talking here is not so much, it's the same but different. On one hand, there's also there's IP addresses or different criminal hideouts that should be revealed and should be exposed to the entire environment, so the entire network. So once one location or one enterprise has been attacked or been vulnerable to a remote criminal hideout, then the rest of the network should know about it. But secondly, a lot of the bots, a lot of the malware today are very, very polymorphic. They're very, very evasive, and they change all the time. Again, very similar to the medical environment. And the fact that there are new signatures that happen, and they look differently all the time, and in order to be evasive, once you detect it and the ability to share this information, to collaborate information between many organizations, will provide us with better protection between all of us provide better protection.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to thank Gabi Reish at Checkpoint for being with us here today.